morning and welcome to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you aboard this morning on this Tuesday. It is the 6th day of June, D-Day plus 79.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about.
It is. Also, we are, I don't usually celebrate someone's passing, but Robert Hansen has gone to, I'm not sure he's gone to be with the Lord. I think it's awfully hot where he is now. But he was the FBI agent who spied for the Russians, and one of the biggest, maybe the worst breach of intelligence and secrecy in the history of the United States. Make Benedict Arnold look like a tea party.
Yeah, Bill, I think he was very, very smart and smarter than a lot of people in the FBI. And I think that, unfortunately, when your talents are used for evil things.
Yeah, he got away with it. Yeah, from about 1979 to 2001. He was, that is a long period of time. God knows how many people lost their lives because of him, and secrets that were given to the Russians and some of our other enemies cannot be. It may be years before we know how much damage this guy did.
Wow.
Even all these years later, having been arrested, I think about 2002. And a movie was made about that. We'll be talking about that in just a moment. But D-Day, 79. And the amazing thing is that here we are, these kids, 19, 20 years old, maybe a few, and of course, officers and others a few years older, storming the beaches of Normandy. This was the big Allied invasion of France that was occupied by Nazi Germany at the time. Just an incredible feat. These kids weren't worried about who was in office, weren't worried about pronouns, weren't worried about their safe spaces, except maybe behind a concrete bunker, so because they were getting fired on by German machine guns. And about 156,000 Allied soldiers hitting the beach of Normandy. It was codenamed Operation Overlord. 156,000. Huge success. This really turned the tide of the war, taking France back away from German occupation. Some 4,000 Allied troops were killed by German soldiers defending the beaches, and at the time, the D-Day invasion, the largest naval air and land operation in history. Within a few days of about 326,000 troops, more than 50,000 vehicles and 100 tons of equipment had landed, and by August, all of northern France had been liberated, and in the spring of 1945, the Allies had defeated the Germans. Historians often refer to D-Day as the beginning of the end of World War II. And we have so many people to thank. There you see General Eisenhower, one of the masterminds behind the D-Day invasion, was our Allied commander talking to his troops. Notice how plain dressed he is. Mm-hmm. He was not one of these guys. Notice there's no scrambled eggs on the cap. You don't see a lot of fruit salad on the chest. In fact, he was the guy actually designed the Eisenhower jacket. It was the jacket that just came down to the waist. Handsome uniform, but he was not a guy for frills and extras. Apropos nothing, but one of my best friends in college served in the Allied headquarters in World War II. He was a captain at the time, retired as a lieutenant colonel. But he was at Allied headquarters. He was given I think he was in signal, but he was given a message, and he said, this has to get out right away. So he goes sailing down the hall of Allied headquarters, and another soldier comes around the corner, and he knocks this guy right on his keister. Reaches down to help him up, and the next thing that he notices is a ring of 5 glittering stars on this guy's shoulder. He's knocked Ike Eisenhower right on his butt.
Oh.
Seeing his career flash before his eyes, he comes to attention. He said, thank God we didn't wear name tags in those days. But he says, Eisenhower gets up, straightens himself out, looks him up and down and says, Captain, I don't know where you're going, but you're in a hell of a lot bigger hurry than I am. Take off. Salutes him, yes, sir. So there you have it. And then, of course, he went on to become president of the United States, serving for 2 terms.
Wow. Well, and you have to respect, people didn't think that they were better than anyone else, even though he was higher ranking.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that speaks a lot to someone's character.
Soldier was a soldier. And by the way, this is an amazing feat for what happened. We're the headquarters here of the 1st Ranger Battalion. Rangers lead the way. as the slogan that was given to them that day by General Norm Cota about an hour after the landing began. General Cota was on one of the landing craft. He had just about 2 weeks ago had celebrated his 53rd birthday. Steps off the landing craft. He runs up the beach. He gets behind a bunch of soldiers who were hunkered down behind, taking enemy fire, and hunkered down behind one of these big pillars, concrete pillars. And he said, "Who are you guys?" I said, "We're the first. We're the Rangers." And he said, "Well, let's don't die here. Let's go inland and die." So Rangers, damn it, lead the way. That is where they got their slogan. Norm Cota, if you get a chance, by all means, on Netflix or wherever you get your movies, go and watch The Picture of the Longest Day. One of the best films ever made about World War II or about D-Day, probably the best film ever made about D-Day. And Robert Mitchum plays Norm Cota in the film. Just a huge, huge cast of just about every star in Hollywood was in this thing. It was amazing.
Well, and I think this is a good day to remember. I mean, we've just had Memorial Day, and I think, Bill, we don't recognize what people sacrificed and people, that never got to meet their child or their grandchild because they were killed over there. And It's for our freedoms. And I think that we've taken them for granted for way too long. And I don't think that we really think about what these days mean.
Yeah.
And how much sacrifice was given.
I can remember some years ago, I was covering the World War II veterans of foreign wars, VFW, the Jewish VFW, had its national headquarters, had its national convention here at the DeSoto. And I went to meet some of these guys. They were amazing. One of them that I met had liberated a concentration camp. And he said the horrible things that he saw, he couldn't talk about for years. And finally, we didn't call it PTSD in those days. It was known as shell shock or something of that nature. And he said, he said you try to get over it. He had gone to, he'd gotten therapy and everything else. Finally, I think it was his grandson that said to him, "Granddaddy, if you don't tell this story, it's going to die with you." And he started talking to his grandson about it and started talking to other people about it. He said, and that was the therapy that he needed, was to talk about it. And now he couldn't shut up about it. But he also said, you need to go into the high schools and teach these and talk to these kids. And he said, please start emphasizing the teaching of World War II. Because it is vital. He said he goes into high schools to talk, and kids will come up and ask him, was World War II before or after Vietnam? I mean, that's on the pathetic side. And we're talking 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
How bad it is now. But after World War II had started, Germany had invaded and occupied northern France. This was a surprise attack. They thought it was going to be somewhere else. In fact, it was supposed to be done on June the 5th. But the weather was so bad. They rehearsed this thing once in the English Channel. They lost 700 soldiers in the rehearsal. And the mistakes that were made by even our own command when these landing craft, the soldiers were fed breakfast on aboard ships, but were taking them to the beach. Well, the ships couldn't get to the beach, so they have to go on these landing craft. Well, some of these landings, it took 2 hours to get to the beach. Now you've just given these guys a big breakfast, and now they're out on the ocean in these little landing craft these guys were getting seasick. They were losing their breakfast right and left. Some of them, all of a sudden, nature calls, and no latrine on board the LSTs.
Yeah.
So it was not the best idea we ever had as far as serving these guys a big breakfast and then sending them out. I realized the thinking behind it of saying, these guys ought to be given, a good meal, because for a lot of them it was going to be their last. But whoever when you're reading, you don't think about that.
Yeah.
You're thinking, it's not going to be me, it's going to be somebody else. But we lost 4,000 soldiers that day. And when you think about it, when you think about the events that we have been in all these years, and the wars we've been in, and we talk about losing 4,000 soldiers just in the 20 years we were in Afghanistan, over 20 years, as opposed to 24 hours, is a pretty amazing thing about how what a big sacrifice this was.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't think we don't fight wars the same way.
Well, yeah, we don't fight them to win anymore.
Yeah, well,
World War II was the last war we fought to win.
Yeah.
Korea we didn't, Vietnam we didn't, and we certainly didn't in Afghanistan and the Middle East. And now it's like we haven't learned our lesson, have we? Because here we are in this quagmire for over a year in the where's that place? Ukraine.
Yeah.
So.
But our friend Lizzie's with us this morning, and she says, just show students photos of all the graves of Americans buried in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, and they take...
Boy, they take care of these things, these people over there.
That's what I saw.
They teach their kids because most of those folks have gone on, have passed on. And the reverence that is given, and one of the most touching speeches, wish we had time to show it, maybe we'll do it later, but Ronald Reagan, when he was president, made the trip on the 40th anniversary of D-Day when he was president. To give you an idea how long. So it's almost been as long since he's made that speech than it was from the time that it happened when he gave his speech. So 39 years ago. Crazy. Yeah, just amazing. Meanwhile, they didn't die on those beaches to fight for traitors, and we had one die yesterday in prison where he should have been given 30 days in the electric chair. Robert Hanssen of the FBI, and they even made a movie about this, about finally tracking this guy down. The movie was a terrific movie called Breached. Here's a look at the trailer.
You're gonna be an agent.
Say it again, okay?
You're gonna be an agent.
You're being tasked to headquarters, where you'll be riding the desk of an agent named Robert Hanssen, considered our most knowledgeable analyst on Russian intel. He's also a sexual deviant. This could mean a huge embarrassment to the Bureau. You're gonna keep an eye on him for us.
Tell me 5 things about yourself, 4 of them true.
I don't think I'd be much good at bluffing.
That would have counted as your lie right there.
Is there anything you can tell me about him? Sure. Take nothing personally.
You know why the Soviet Empire collapsed?
Good morning.
Godlessness. God expects you to live your faith, Eric, at all times.
I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking for. The guy doesn't drink, goes to church every day.
Faith, family, country. Those are the things that matter.
Come to admire him, I see.
Yes.
Respect him?
I never cared about making headlines. Wanted to make history.
He's a traitor, Eric. Started spying for the Russians in 1985. Good news is you're in the middle of the biggest case we've ever run. The damage he's done to the U.S. government is in the billions. It might be years before we truly know how many deaths he's been responsible for.
Why don't we just arrest him?
Can't do that. Director wants him caught in the act.
What if he's smarter than I am?
He spent the last 20 years outthinking Russian spies. He's smarter than all of us.
Have you been in my briefcase?
No.
Don't like being scrutinized. Have to do something about that.
He's parked outside your apartment.
Where were you?
I'm telling so many lies now, I can't keep them straight anymore.
Are you finding this job stressful?
Sometimes.
Pray more.
He knows the names of every source we've ever turned. Their lives are all at risk.
I need to know if I can trust you.
What are you doing?
Who is calling you in the car?
Put the gun down!
I need to know if I can trust you!
Powerful stuff. If you haven't seen the movie, by all means, look that one up too. So D-Day and Breach, you have your homework. All right,
Yes.
coming up next.
Well, and the FBI, we don't stop there today. The FBI reported, kind of worried about their informants. So we'll be talking about that when we get back.
Yep, that's next. Get Real America, we are focused on Savannah, but we'd like to hear from other communities as well. We have a lot in common.
Serving the Savannah area with the power of the Shield since 1934, with personal insurance, employee benefits, and business insurance. With integrity, security, and trust. For more information, go to thepoweroftheshield.com.
Come join us today at Sweet Potatoes Kitchen for some of that good Southern home cooking, like fried chicken, fish, and mouth-watering banana pudding. Say it's the best in the world, and you won't get an argument from me. Also, those vegetables are fresh and delicious. Voted Southside's best restaurant in Savannah at least 5 times, and large corporate parties are welcome. Tell them Bill Edwards sent you. Drop by and eat today. Everybody loves sweet potatoes.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you with us on this Tuesday, D-Day plus 79, June the 6th.
Yes, and again, it's important to remember why we remember these days and what actually happened on these days. So make sure you're teaching your kids about that.
That's right. So if you're a history teacher, when school's back in, start teaching this.
Absolutely. And did you know that the homicide rate in Savannah has gone down?
Wow, there's a surprise.
Yeah, because it's not true.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the current Georgia has actually reported that homicide rates have gone down in Savannah. However, when you look at the actual numbers,
I tell people what the current is, just in case.
So the current is a independent media, digital media platform that reports out on a lot of politics and different things like that and stuff going on in Savannah and different areas of Georgia. So our friend Anthony Burton, who is running for DA, he posted some interesting statistics himself this morning, or actually yesterday. And it says, when you Google Savannah shooting deaths 2023, the first 2 links show a shooting death for March and April this year. That's 2 murders. There's definitely more, but he only looked up 2 just to make his point. But it's not that murders are down. And there has only been 1 this year that's been reported, which we all know is not true if you watch the news at all.
Oh, for sure.
It's that murder arrests are down this year, mainly because of the failures of DA Jones' administration. Murders aren't like other crimes where the cops walk in and make the arrest. They are intense investigations that can take months. Instead of making an arrest and doing the investigation, the normal route is that the investigation is done first, the case is presented to the grand jury, and then once indicted, the murderer is arrested on the grand jury warrant. So there is like a time span where the murderer is not arrested until they've actually done the investigation already, which is different from other crimes. But as we know from the stories in the news, like a man beating a woman into a coma and getting out because he wasn't indicted in time by DA Jones, she doesn't know how to use a grand jury. The takeaway from this, murders are not down, murder arrests are way down, and DA Jones is at fault. That's Anthony's take on it. But I think it's interesting that we have people reporting on this and not doing the research. They're just taking it at face value, and this is what they do. They manipulate numbers and make it look better than it is. Well, and also, I think
how
we're
old-fashioned doing research.
I know. How dare they do research?
Yeah.
But I also, super common during an election year for stuff to get manipulated, especially since we have Van Jones up for re-election along with the rest of the city council.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just keep that in mind, that it's pathetic that we can't have somebody that in office who is supposed to be supporting and defending those of us who pay their salary.
Yes, and Steve Stanton says, fake news locally. I expect nothing less.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with you, but it's very frustrating because people don't do their own research. They really rely on a lot of these news sources to tell them what's going on. And obviously there has not been 1 murder in Savannah this year.
Yeah, meanwhile, the Department of Defense, Department of Justice, and others are still under scrutiny, especially the Department of Justice. And the FBI that we were referring to earlier, back once upon a time, was one of the greatest, if not the greatest, law enforcement and law fighting organization in the world, in the history of the world.
Well, they have a little bit of a shady past, if I'm
Oh,
being
yeah,
honest.
I know that. Yeah,
They've not always been great.
Yeah, don't we all?
Yes. So we do have Comer talking about the FBI and kind of what they're doing and maybe some of the risks that are going to be involved moving forward.
Congressman James Comer,
Yes.
From Kentucky. Here he is.
Entity will hear more as James Comer is now speaking at the Capitol. Let's listen.
FBI officials confirmed that the unclassified FBI-generated record has not been disproven and is currently being used in an ongoing investigation. The confidential human source who provided information about then Vice President Biden being involved in a criminal bribery scheme is a trusted, highly credible informant who has been used by the FBI for over 10 years and has been paid over 6 figures. These are facts, and no amount of spin and frankly lies from the White House or congressional Democrats can change this information. At the briefing, the FBI again refused to hand over the unclassified record to the custody of the House Oversight Committee, and we will now initiate contempt of Congress hearings this Thursday. Given the severity and complexity of the allegations contained within this record, Congress must investigate further. Americans have lost trust in the FBI's ability to enforce the law impartially and demand answers, transparency, and accountability. The investigation is not dead. This is only the beginning. It appears this investigation is part of an ongoing investigation, which I assume is in Delaware. The Oversight Committee will follow the facts and be transparent to the American people with our findings.
So James Comer there, and I think, one of the things that's also come out as of yesterday from Anna Paulina Luna, who's also an amazing representative from Florida, she says the FBI has an informant who brought forward info that Biden received $5 million from foreign national while vice president. They stated they were afraid that this informant would be killed if unmasked. We have a president in the White House that we've all known is he's bought and paid for. And it's interesting. I mean, we knew this, 3 years ago?
Yeah. Her mistake, by the way, was saying he, so that eliminates half of the people that are whistleblowers.
Yes.
So that's that. But this is frightening on so many scales that they're worried about the safety of this person who could be killed.
Well, this seems like a television series, a suspense television series that you're, I don't know if you ever watched House of Cards, but it was kind of like this unbelievable story.
Yeah. And
then you kind of, are seeing how things are unfolding here, and the corruption is just unbelievable. And it's something that a lot of people can't wrap their head around. They can't believe that the government could be this corrupt. And I think that that's why they've had a hard time really exposing this.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to think of it happening here. This happens somewhere. This happens in Russia. This happens in China.
Banana republics.
Yeah, in banana republics, which we are becoming. In fact, I think we're actually giving banana republics a good name.
Yeah.
I mean, it is frightening. It is disgusting that these people are dying on so many different levels. And it is these undercover investigations. And suddenly, I can remember when all of a sudden people had information about the Clintons. Suddenly they disappeared or died or were indicted for something or other and found themselves behind bars. And the media just sort of poo-pooed the idea or didn't report the true facts. We've had these hearings. And suddenly, and the fact that if you go back to Watergate, which was nothing compared to what we're doing here, Republicans were on board with this. They were cooperating in every way possible against Richard Nixon, who was the most heavily reelected president in history. And Ronald Reagan also carried 49 states, but he didn't have the margin of victory that Richard Nixon had. And he only lost Massachusetts, where George McGovern had been governor, and by a few votes. But the congressional hearings were all were bipartisan. The Democrats 100% are in lockstep going against this. And yet when they were in power, and they didn't have much more power, their margin of power wasn't any much bigger than the one that the Republicans have right now. Indicted President of the United States, Donald Trump, twice impeached him twice over false evidence that they had drummed up that we knew 4 or 5 years ago was paid for by the Hildebeest and her Confederates. And yet they went full bore, and even some of the Republicans went along with it. And that was, how disgusting is that with the Lynn Cheney crowd and others.
Well, because we don't have two-party system. We have a uniparty.
Yeah.
And, Steve Stanton, he says, once upon a time under Edward Hoover, they were as corrupt as they are and as bad as they are now. And Lizzie says, who else was involved in the scheme with Biden? I think that there's probably a lot of people that are in some of those Senate and congressional seats that were involved. I think that that's why it's also been so challenging to get some of this brought to light. And I think that when it comes to Nixon, I think there was a reason they didn't want him in office. I think that he was, even Republicans, I don't know that they were necessarily, I think it's easy to get people to get involved in kind of getting rid of someone when there's something at stake for you personally. And I think that that's unfortunately been the case for a really long time in our country, is that we have a lot of politicians that aren't there to serve the people. They're there to serve themselves and line their pockets. Yeah,
I can remember that when Herman Cain was interviewed Herman, who's a good friend for years and years, and God rest his soul. Well, we could use his voice today. But he said that when he was talking to J.D. Watts, Watts said, that there are 3 categories of people up here. Those who are happy to be here, those who just want to just go along to get along, and then there are those who are determined to use their power for either for good or for bad, one way or the other. But those are the categories that are there. And those are the people that we have to look out for.
Yep, I agree. I think that there's, and like I've said before, I think that people just can't be up there very long. I think that whether they're in a state house, a local government seat, I think that there are just too many concessions made over, a long period of time that makes them susceptible to things. We're human. Yeah, I understand that.
Sure, power. They also are saying if power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It is a powerful aphrodisiac. I told you the story mentioning Eisenhower a while ago. Said he would run when they convinced him to run for president, and the Republicans picked him to run on their ticket. He said, "Okay, I'll serve one term, and that'll be it." Because he was technically an old man at that time. What we consider him, he's just a spring chicken compared to the guy we got now.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But he said, I'll run just once. Then he announced his run for re-election, and his buddy Mark Clark, who was living in Charleston at the time, said, "I'm one of the great heroes of World War II." Said, "Ike, I thought you said you were only going to run once." He said, "Mark, once you get a hold of all this power, it's impossible, humanly impossible, to let it go." It is
wild to think about.
Yeah. So we got term limits for the president. Why don't we have them for the rest of the Congress?
Well, because we should be an electorate that's involved, and if we were involved, I don't think these politicians would last very many
We would
terms.
have term limits if if people got involved and did their constitutional and your constitutional right as your obligation as a citizen to vote and to do it intelligently. Educate yourself and vote for the person you think is going to do the job.
Yep.
Coming up next is a guy who thinks he can do the job from right up the road in South Carolina.
We'll be seeing Tim Scott when we get back.
Yep, on the way. At Get Real America, we want to make sure that the real story gets out, and you can help us as a sponsor or as an advertiser to make sure that word does get out to the community.
Be a sponsor and support your local community here at Get Real America.
I don't think it's an accident that I ended up writing music for a living, because I think I lived in a house where I saw how deeply it affected everyone in the house. And just how much everyone defined themselves by the music they listened to.
Music as a framework, I think, gave my parents my identity from a young age. You can like any music that you want if it makes you feel happy. And now when I hear certain songs, I think of them, and I think of them in their happiest state, and it makes me happy.
If they seem like they're having trouble talking about something, I try to tell them about a time when I felt something similar.
Whatever the issue was, we would tell them the pros and cons and how important it was that they had come to us because we could always help them. I think the real important point, we always told them, no matter what you do, no matter what happens, we will help you through it no matter what it is.
Come join us today at Sweet Potatoes Kitchen for some of that good Southern home cooking, like fried chicken, fish, and mouth-watering banana pudding. Say it's the best in the world, and you won't get an argument from me. Also, those vegetables are fresh and delicious. Voted Southside's best restaurant in Savannah at least 5 times, and large corporate parties are welcome. Tell them Bill Edwards sent you. Drop by and eat today. Everybody loves sweet potatoes.
Serving the Savannah area with the power of the Shield since 1934, with personal insurance, employee benefits, and business insurance. With integrity, security, and trust. For more information, go to thepoweroftheshield.com.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you aboard here on this Tuesday, D-Day plus 79.
Yes, and before we jump into our next segment, I want to talk. Lizzie Warren says, any politician who doubles his net worth in a short time after an election deserves intense scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, exactly.
And they should really be able to answer how much stock they have in certain things, like maybe Pfizer. Just saying.
Yeah, just some of those things.
Yeah, very specific.
Mm-hmm.
So Tim Scott, he's, announced his run for president. Very exciting, actually, because Tim Scott has been kind of, I think that he's been a moderate in the Republican Party. He's like in between, like a Buddy Carter and a Matt Gaetz. He's not, he's definitely not Freedom Caucus, but he definitely is not a go along to get along, I don't think.
No, a gentleman of a lot of integrity, did a great job in Congress, is now doing a great job in the Senate for us here in South Carolina. It was a pleasure to meet him on several occasions. Got a chance to meet him right soon after he was elected to Congress when I was there in Beaufort for a change of command ceremony at the Marine Corps Air Station, and just very approachable and just a genuinely nice man, and now serving us well in the Senate. But he is being besmirched, of course, by the left, because you can't be a conservative black person. Otherwise, you are the black face of white America.
You know who's an expert on this?
Yes, I do. A white person, a couple of white people.
Yeah, the happiest people we know.
Mm-hmm.
Joy Behar. Mm-hmm. She's an expert on being black in America.
Yeah, it's just amazing that she thinks that Clarence Thomas from right here in Savannah and Tim Scott don't understand blacks in America.
You have indicated that you don't believe in systemic racism. What is your definition of systemic racism?
Let me answer the question that you've answered.
Or does it even exist in your mind?
Let me answer the question this way. One of the things I think about, and one of the reasons why I'm on the show, is because of the comments that were made, frankly, on this show, that the only way for a young African-American kid to be successful in this country is to be the exception and not the rule. That is a dangerous, offensive, disgusting message to send to our young people today, that the only way to succeed is by being the exception. I will tell you that if my life is the exception, I can't imagine.
But it is.
But it's not actually. It's
been 114 years.
Yeah. So the fact of the matter is, we've had an African American president, African American vice president. We've had 2 African Americans to be secretaries of the state. In my home city, the police chief is an African American who's now running for mayor. The head of the highway patrol for South Carolina is an African American.
Still
in
exceptions.
In 1975, there was about 15% employment in the African American community. For the first time in the history of the country, it's under 5%.
40% homelessness.
And 50% of
African Americans
50% of the folks in our community
get 13% of the population.
You had the chance to ask the question. I know that I've watched you on the show that you like people to be deferential and respectful, so I'm going to do the same thing.
True.
So here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest the fact of the matter is that progress in America is palpable. It can be measured in generations. I look back at the fact that my grandfather, born in 1921 in Sally, South Carolina, when he was on a sidewalk, a white person was coming, he had to step off and not make eye contact. That man believed then, with some doubt now, in the goodness of America, because he believed that having faith in God, faith in himself, and faith in what the future could hold for his kids would unleash opportunities in ways that you cannot imagine. Every kid today can look, just change the stations and see how much progress has been made in this country. ABC, NBC, CBS, ESPN, CNN, Fox News all have African American and Hispanic hosts. So what I'm suggesting is that the yesterday's exception is today's rule. And for us to suggest...
America has met its promise.
No, of course, the concept of America is that we are going to become a more perfect union. That in fact, the challenges that we face 50 years ago and 60 years ago should not be the same challenges that we face today. And here's the way that you measure that. When my mother was born, about 10% of African Americans got a high school degree, diploma. Today, it's over 90%. When you look at the income, success that we've had...
That's an HBCU stat.
Well, listen, HBCU stat is a good one, because one of the reasons why I took the funding for HBCUs to the highest level in the history of the country, and then I helped make it permanent, is because I believe that education is the closest thing to magic in America. So I'm about making sure that our kids have as many opportunities to succeed as possible. It's one of the reasons why...
I need an opportunity to succeed, because I have to go to... They're begging. We have more time, though. They're begging. You're coming.
I'm just getting started.
He did quite well there.
Yeah. At one point, the audience started booing some of the stuff he said. And to Whoopi Goldberg's credit, she shut the audience down and said, we don't boo here. This is The View. And then a producer came out later and said, we have to go to break. I've never had a producer actually come out on set and tell me we had to go to break.
He was making too much sense.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Joy Behar was not there. I know they showed some still pictures of her, so she doesn't show up on Monday. You would think she would show up for Tim Scott. But she didn't. But she knows that Tim is wrong.
She knows what it's like to be black in America.
A white Jewish lady knows exactly what it's like to be black in Black America.
And he's one of these guys who, he's like Clarence Thomas, black Republican who believes in pulling yourself by your bootstraps, rather than, to me, understanding the systemic racism that African Americans face in this country and other minorities. He doesn't get it, neither does Clarence.
Right.
And that's why they're Republicans.
Yeah. I know.
Your IQ goes down considerably if you watch that show.
Well, here's the thing. There's a reason she wasn't there. Because she would have had to answer to Tim Scott about that comment.
Exactly.
I think that's why she wasn't there. And that he was there on a Monday, because I'm pretty sure they could have scheduled it a different day.
Yeah. And by the way, good kudos on him for going on there. Ron DeSantis turned him down. I wish he hadn't. As Tommy Lahren said this morning on Fox and Friends First, that the Republicans need to go on shows like that to at least get their point of view out. That most of that audience is not hearing when they laugh at a stupid remark that a white Jewish lady, millionaire by the way, living in a gated community with armed guards, knows more about the plight of Black America. Clarence Thomas, who grew up here in a little place called Pinpoint, and all the discrimination that they faced over the years. When I didn't go to school with a black student until I was a sophomore in high school. It's the first time that they started integrating the schools here in Chatham County. and that was in 1963-64. So that's how far they've come in that amount of time. And I grew up with sign. You get on a city bus and it said, colored people will sit in the back of the bus. There was a line. There was a painted line, and the last on the back doors of the bus, and the blacks sat back there. If you went to a white theater, they sat in the balcony, or they had their own black theater. So there was a thriving black community in those days that was destroyed by civil rights.
Well, and I cannot even fathom that, because I never have lived in a world where, I wasn't raised to think about color. And so I will say, being in the West, it is a lot different than being down here, but very interesting. And
but you don't have nearly the black population.
We don't, but I did grow up in a smaller town, and the funny thing is there was a black family that lived there. They were the most popular kids in school. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't a thing for us. So it's very interesting. And I haven't thought about race until the last 3 years. I mean, I had a mixed race cousin. It just wasn't a thing.
Well, but you can thank the Dalai Lama for destroying race relations in this country, and it's getting worse. And because the race industry makes too much money. If you figure a guy can change his name to Igby Dundung or whatever it is, and he goes around writing books about racism and making speeches at $5,000 or $6,000 a shot, and what is his name? Well, whatever it is, he's a race baiter.
There's so many of them now.
He and the Reverend Al Charlatan, whose IQ is approaching double digits, maybe. And I'm surprised, they pay him millions of dollars to be on Messed Up NBC, and I'm actually surprised that Tawana Brawley doesn't have her own show on MSNBC.
It could be coming.
Hey, baby, don't give me any ideas.
Our friend Lizzie, she says Clarence Thomas is hated by local black people. They sneer at the mention of his name.
Yeah,
and it's really sad because he's conservative.
Yeah, one of the things that they'll ask was that somebody was, I think a teacher or somebody told me that we were talking about this recently about George Washington. And these people were talking about, the kids were talking about bad things about George Washington. What they knew about him was that he owned slaves, and maybe they might know he's on the $1 bill.
Yeah.
And an outside chance they know he might have been the first president. But they said, okay, tell me about George Washington. What do you know about him? And the silence was deafening. Nothing.
Well, and Clarence Thomas, I mean, one of the most intellectual people you could,
brilliant.
Yeah, I just can't even imagine. And, to be villainized by the people that you grew up around, I don't understand it. Celebrate the successes of the people that grew up here.
That's when you saw things like the National Association of Always Complaining People showed their true colors, pun intended, when Clarence Thomas was nominated. And being raked over the coals by the Democratans and their Confederates up and also this idiot law professor from Oklahoma coming in, who had been one of his clerks, and started making all these accusations about him and everything else, and that were not true, going on and proven to be false. And yet she managed to keep her job, and unfortunately, she's teaching law students. But the fact that he was just raked over the coals, and you would think the NAACP would have stood up for him.
Nope.
But they didn't. So if they really are the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, then why weren't they standing up for Clarence Thomas? Just like where is the National Organization of Women today over all these males that are in women's sports?
Yeah, it's all a racket.
Where are they? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just
always
a racket to make money, just like Black Lives Matter and the rest of those cretins. All right, coming up next.
It's graduation season.
Mm-hmm.
We have some incredible kids graduating, and we're going to talk about two of them when we get back.
Mm-hmm.
Who is a kid? Well, that's a kid. And another. Look, a gaggle of them. Or is it a herd? Litter? Pride. But what about her? Tell her she's not a kid. Or him. So how do we tell who is a kid? Height? Age, maybe. But some of us have to grow up faster than others. A kid. A kid. A kid wants to make the world better. And one day, he just might. Is a kid fearless? Vulnerable? Strong? Nervous? Yes. 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 Kiwanis is 600,000 kids at heart doing all the little and big things it takes to help children around the world. Because kids need Kiwanis. All of them.
When you're looking to buy a business or sell a business, the experts at Best Business Brokers have you covered. Whether you're ready to cash in on your years of hard work or you're taking that first step in buying a business of your own, they're here to guide you through the process and make sure you get the best outcome possible. By having Best Business Brokers assist you when you buy a business or sell a business, they handle the legwork of the intricate process. This ensures a smooth transition of ownership, allowing you to get to work immediately or receive payment for your business as soon as possible. With base operations in Savannah and Charleston, they service all of Georgia and South Carolina. If you're considering starting a business here, the mild winters and 5-tiered economic areas make these the perfect places to do so. If you're ready to buy a business or sell a business, then you're ready to contact Best Business Brokers. Visit their website at b3brokers.com or call at 912-349-0940.
Serving the Savannah area with the power of the Shield since 1934, with personal insurance, employee benefits, and business insurance. With integrity, security, and trust. For more information, go to thepoweroftheshield.com.
Come join us today at Sweet Potatoes Kitchen for some of that good Southern home cooking, like fried chicken, fish, and mouth-watering banana pudding. Say it's the best in the world, and you won't get an argument from me. Also, those vegetables are fresh and delicious. Voted Southside's best restaurant in Savannah at least 5 times, and large corporate parties are welcome. Tell them Bill Edwards sent you. Drop by and eat today. Everybody loves sweet potatoes.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Well, it's graduation season. I was just up in Charlotte last week for Memorial Day weekend, and our twins graduated from high school. They went to 2 different schools, so got to two different graduations, and normally it would be like, oh, let me slit my wrist. You're sitting there saying, when is this going to be over? But it was absolutely sensational. Both of them were extremely pleasant and exciting, as well as very informative, and to see how much the kids love the school, and great speakers at both events. We'll get into that, but we'll talk about that another time. But Battery Creek High School in Beaufort had its graduation just recently. And, it's one thing you get, the salutatorian and the valedictorian are the 2 highest positions, and some schools have even, for fairness and not to make the other kids feel bad, have gotten rid of those. But fortunately, we're still doing them here. And the salutatorian valedictorian at Battery Creek High School this year were something else. And I was extremely impressed with this story that was done on WJCL, TV 22, of the valedictorian and the salutatorian at Battery Creek High School, because they're brothers. Just imagine.
But what if your competition was your brother?
All new tonight, a pair of Buford twins graduated high school at the top of their class. And the twins are continuing a family tradition of excellence. WJCL 22 News' Andy Cole joins us now live in the studio tonight with their story. Andy, can't wait to hear it.
That's right, Shannon. Becoming valedictorian and salutatorian, it's hard enough. But what if your competition was your brother? Twins Logan and Ashton don't really see it as such, but more of a way to continue the legacy their 6 siblings left before them.
This graduation season,
we knew it was going to be one of us.
One Buford family is celebrating a little more than most.
Since I had him with me the entire time, it was fun.
Logan and Ashton Morgan are the last to leave the nest, but they're doing it as valedictorian and salutatorian.
Me and Logan, we were in the same classes, exact same classes, same teacher, until about 2 years ago when we went into our career paths.
The health science program that I took had one class that was higher weighting than the business pathway that he took.
On Friday, the pair graduated from Battery Creek High School in Buford, but they're not the first in the family to do a little more than most. They're the last of 8 siblings, 5 of which were named valedictorian, 1 salutatorian, and 2 others within the top 20 of their classes.
We're both going to serve church missions. I'm going to New Delhi, India for 2 years.
And I'm going to Brazil. And then after that 2-year church mission, we'll go to the same college, BYU, out in Utah.
Ashton and Logan both say it was their family and their faith that pushed them to do a little more than most.
I'm living on their legacy that they left, and they've always been like my idols growing up.
We're both looking toward the future. This is just a milestone on the way there.
Now, Logan and Ashton's parents tell me they're excited to get the last of their kids out of the nest and enjoy a little peace and quiet, but they will be rest assured they're going to be taken care of. I mean, that many valedictorians in the same family, one's hard enough, but I can't even imagine all those.
Proud parents, and they say they're going to be excited about getting them out and having some peace and quiet, but they're going to miss those boys.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will.
I don't know if I could have even carried their books. Considering, the valedictorian, salutatorian, not a bad bookends.
I did ask, though, if they had any fun in high school. They tell us they had a lot of fun.
Oh.
So that's great to hear.
They'll have more fun.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks. Great job on that story.
Thank you.
Yeah, the better students did have more fun.
Well, I think the busier you are, like the more, you're involved in so many things.
Yeah,
so I think
you learn how to, and all the athletes I've talked to over the years when I was doing sportscasting, they had learned how to dedicate their time and segment it properly. In fact, there was one kid that had a little thing in his pocket that told him what he was going to do today. He would call up his grandmother in an afternoon and said, "Grandma, I have an extra 45 minutes this afternoon. I can come over and play cards with you if you want me to," or something like that. He was that dedicated. And at graduation, I think the salutatorian or the valedictorian said, and Scott's here today. He's the most, determined, most regulated guy in the world. In fact, he probably has a thing in his pocket telling him graduation day is today.
But I think athletes actually do really well because, number one, they have to keep their grades up.
Yep.
They also have to learn to manage their time. And I actually had to work, and I was on drill team. So I worked 20 hours a week, had to have, and our grade point average for the drill team was 3.0 because of our coach.
Whoa.
So if we had anything below a B, we had to be in study hall. And she made the lady write down our names. And if we weren't there, we ran laps.
Yeah, study hall.
She was very strict with us. So, but you learn to manage your time differently, and you learn how you have to work towards things a little bit differently than, if you have all the time in the world and you're not really.
And if you're making good grades, you are enjoying yourself.
Yes.
It's more enjoyable.
Well, and the pressure
Yeah.
that you experience, I think, is healthy.
Mhm.
Like, I think it's good for kids to experience like some of that intense pressure because
They should.
I do well under pressure. If I don't have the pressure, there's no urgency for me.
Mhm. Yeah,
it's a
and
weird-
yeah, and failure also is a good teacher. You shouldn't be killing yourself over failing to make a grade of some sort. Just keep on going and say, well, look, let me go back and see what I did wrong. That's how we get all the great products that we have today. I can remember years ago, Dad was telling me about he'd gone to a Rotary Club meeting, I think up in Atlanta, and the CEO of or the top engineer at the Ford Motor Company was the guest speaker, and this is in the early '60s, and they were talking about how much car engines have improved and how much cars have improved. The way the cars were improving was because of NASCAR and auto racing. That when they would look at things that broke and saw how to, why did they break? Why did they break at that point? So on and so forth. He said, and he showed these pictures that they had. One of a Ford was leading the Daytona 500 with 5 laps to go and blew the engine. And Ford had never won the Daytona 500 back in the early '60s. And he said, now here's that engine back in Detroit or Dearborn. And he said, and it showed it with all the parts apart and the engineers poring over it. Okay, what went wrong? What failed? Why did it last this long and not longer? And they did that every year. And all of a sudden in 1963, Ford's finished 1, 2, 3 at the Daytona 500. And he said, and the result of them going back and seeing what went wrong, what failed, how can we improve that, and they've been winning ever since.
It's okay to fail.
Yeah, yeah.
And we will all
Teaches
fail.
you stuff.
Yes, we will all fail.
It's just
That's
picking yourself back up again.
Absolutely. And we have a couple of comments here that I really want to get to, and
Mhm.
one of them is Steve Staton. He was talking about his dad, and it's not showing up on my screen, but we also have Lizzie Warren, who says Kavanaugh accuser admits she fabricated allegations as a ploy for attention. Imagine that. And, of course, Anita Hill, which was the person that came against...
Anita Hill, yes. Pure as the driven snow. Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
Wonderful
one who was-
human being as well.
Yeah, sure was. Yeah. All hail to Clarence Thomas. We're trying to get a statue of Clarence put up in Atlanta. Want to get one here in Savannah too. And those who were opposed to it, a pox on both your houses.
Why would you be opposed to that? I don't understand.
Because idiots exist, and because liars keep trying to educate our kids to be stupid.
So Steve Staton this morning, my dad, 2-time Purple Heart vet from World War II. It's who I think, and the millions like him for D-Day.
Mm-hmm.
And I 100% agree with you. And I hope that more people remember those people on days like today. Most schools are out, so I don't know that a lot of kids get a lot of attention around this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. But they should, and there are a lot of summer camps going on. We'll be telling you about later in the week as well. So we're glad you're here, and remember those who died for our freedoms. And tell that to your kids or your grandkids or whoever else. Mike Huckabee has got a great kids series that I've ordered for my grandchildren, and it's free. You just pay the shipping. Little books that they have, little pamphlets that they have out on freedom, on the Statue of Liberty, on George Washington, on capitalism. It is really, really terrific, and just the greatness of America.
I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we appreciate you tuning in. Remember to like, share, download our app, The Local Spin, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Hump Day.